Hi, how you doing? I'm making this video because I am, as has often happened ever since I've been a teenager, I've gone into an altered state without the use of any drugs. I'm in what you might call an altered state right now, without any drugs. Slightly altered. What happens is that all my life I've been, since I was like 16, I've been into like meditation and stuff like that, and also I've smoked pot and taken LSD and stuff like that, and mushrooms and things, and so I became a long while back engrossed in a kind of comparison between states, and I found that it's quite possible to achieve an altered state that's fundamentally the same without all sort of the trappings of the drug, of the state that the drugs put you into. And that raised the interesting question, what characterizes that state, and how is it different from your so-called ordinary state? Well, what I've realized is that it basically, in a nutshell, and I can actually go into it at will just by giving myself the following suggestion, so I invite you to try this too, because you might find that it works quite well. You'll see what I'm talking about if you do it. The thing that characterizes the altered state, and yes, I'm talking about an altered state, is an altered state that is common to, let's say, hallucinogens and which are a whole huge array of drugs. I'm going to talk a little more about that later because obviously the obvious conclusion is that if all these different little chemicals do it, but it's got some distinguishing characteristics as a state, it can't be really caused by the drug. It has to be an actual level or an actual something that you're seeing. And the drugs, a whole array of drugs just help you get there. That's the conclusion I came to after seeing a whole number of drugs and then going into states like that myself without any drugs. I began to realize that yes, indeed, I'm actually glimpsing another level. I'm actually seeing another level. You really don't even need the drug to do that. But they have, they have kick, and they can get you further into it faster and things like that, probably. But the thing I'm interested in is the commonality of the state. Now, what characterizes the state, I was just about to tell you that, is really this. It's a state in which you realize that the world around you is a dream, or is mind. That's the same thing. And this might work to get you into that state if you tell yourself very forcefully and just give yourself the suggestion that this is a dream. You'll see what I mean. If you stick with that thought for a little while, something starts to open up. What happens is certainty of a certain sort dissipates, and a familiarity. There are strange changes in familiarity. You recognize the mind, or you recognize a dream is where all those thoughts happen. You know what I mean? That's what you recognize. That, and then you say, "Oh, that's just my mind." That's, I don't really know where it is, what it is, but it's my mind. Now, when you say that the outside world is your mind, it's the actual sort of suddenly becoming really clear on that leads to that altered state. There's no drugs necessary at all. You'll see what I mean. Now, the funny thing about it, though, is it isn't a dream in the ego sense of like you can dream anything up and stuff like that, or at least not really. It's like you realize that you are a bigger mind, and that mind is dreaming. Thus, your small ego mind is some little part of that, and that bigger thing is what's dreaming the whole thing. And it's just a weird sort of, the space of your mind becomes more visible because here's another way to describe it. The space of your mind becomes more visible because you no longer are exclusively focused on this space. It's really kind of simple, but it's strange, and there's even a sort of spookiness to it. You know what I mean? It can even feel sort of lonely or something. It isn't necessarily like, oh, wonderful, stuff like that. It's like, but it can lead to, it sort of clarifies things or something. It's like this. The physical world being mind, nothing that you think is going to change the physical world, because the physical world is already thought. So the physical world is as much thinking you as you're thinking the physical world. But this element that you consider thought somehow becomes clear as the element, in a strange way. And something shifts when you get that. When you get that clear, it's like something lines up that wasn't lined up before. That actually was lined up before, but you didn't know it was lined up. Don't let this scare you. It's not scary at all. This is it doesn't change anything really. It's just like you're seeing, that allows you to see in another to another level. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's really strange. But what happens is that the things that used to be all certain just sort of aren't really as certain. There's this mystery that just automatically comes in. It's because nobody then can tell you what reality is exactly, because it's your. You realize something about how it's your mind, or your mind's perception of it, that's really changing. Your mind. And your mind perception of what? And then it brings in all these questions. Your mind's perception of it. Well, what's it now? It is thought now. So, what's it perceiving? It's perceiving its thought. Its own thought, or thought itself, or something. And that, it leads to this funny paradoxical thing. But I don't want you to let it drive you crazy. It's not going to drive you crazy. It'll allow you to see things in a different way. Everything is just as certain somehow. Everything's just as, because this bigger mind or whatever it is in charge of the whole thing. See, not you and your ego. Just don't let this like weird you out. I'm telling you, if you just look at this level, if you look at the outer world as mind, and you can get it to sort of line up with your thought, you will see that state that I'm talking about. Maybe I have described it okay, maybe I haven't. It doesn't even matter. I'm just telling you, this is a way that you can get into a certain state. Now, I mean, you can get into that state, and it is the same state as you see on acid, on pot, on almost virtually any drug, because I think what drugs actually do is they create a sort of shift to your system, so that your state is radically different enough that you suddenly have to realize that your state isn't a closed book. That's like the main thing. Things don't seem like a closed book anymore, because you're in the mind now. You can see how this leads to increased creativity, sort of a magical quality. But don't confuse it with your own ego, because that's psychotic. It isn't psychotic. It isn't something you have to worry about or anything. If you people sometimes sort of touch on this state, and then they're still in touch with their ego, or that it's a result of like ego weakness and duress and confusion. They can go into a really mad, insane sort of state, not realizing where their mind ends and reality begins, supposedly, because there isn't a big dividing line. But nevertheless, they're still in touch with their ego. They don't realize that this bigger thing is what's dreaming the whole thing. Thanks. See you. I'm out of time.